Yeah, so I mentioned a little bit earlier. So Father Joseph is the rector of St. James here in Springfield. Um, he also has a retreat center called House of Blessings. Um, and is, I think centering prayer is probably one of the things that I think of most whenever I think of Father Joseph. When we started working on this, I definitely wanted to ask him to be involved and to talk about centering prayer. So Joseph, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Josh. Could you make me a co-host so that I can share the PowerPoint as I speak?
You should be already.
Okay, okay, that'd be great. Okay. Yeah, okay. First of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be with you. And as you know, that I was tested positive for COVID a week ago, Wednesday last week. So it's almost, you know, 10, 12 days. It comes and goes. I'm better, much better, but then there are days when things don't work out the way that I want it to be. And so this has been a journey, and I'm glad my kids, Asha is here, and Amrit and Gabriel and Owen, they are healthy, even though we were all over each other when I was sick, which tells me, well, if we have the mask, I think it is helpful, tremendously helpful. Only my wife Kimby and I got exposed to it, and we both got pretty sick. The first 5 days were not the best 5 days, and yesterday and day before I still had fever and body pain and headaches and eye problems and all those stuff. But it is much better today. So I thought if it gets bad today, I wouldn't be able to join you. But I'm glad I'm not that bad, and I don't look that either. So I'm glad. And one good thing is I don't have any smell or taste, so I eat less. Thankfully, I lost about 10 pounds. And can't beat that, you know. So I'd been wanting to really be my ideal BMI. Finally, I got there. And so it is a great thing. So I'm glad to be here with you. And as Josh mentioned, centering prayer is one of my favorite forms of prayer. I studied learned about it when I was 15. Just out of my high school and went to seminary at the age of 15 and became a Franciscan Capuchin monk. And it was a daily practice as a monk. But then you don't expect that to be available to people who are not monks or nuns until I learned about Thomas Merton and Father Thomas Keating and all these people who made it available to anyone with an interest in prayer, which is, I call, the highest form of prayer in prayer life, the best and the easiest, but the highest form of prayer. Because when we speak about prayer, what we are used to is the Book of Common Prayer and a set of vocal prayers. And the Book of Common Prayer, we have about close to 1,000 pages textbook. And me growing up as a Roman Catholic and being in a Franciscan community, the prayer form we had identical to the Book of Common Prayer was the Prayer of the Hours, which was 4 books the size of the Book of Common Prayer. So that's about 5,000 pages of prayers in a given year cycle. So it was very easy for me to jump into the Book of Common Prayer because I am bringing it down from 5,000 to 1,000. It was easier. But then learning the centering prayer was even better because it reduces it from 5,000 to 1,000 to half a page. So you could agree with me, it is 10 times better process in prayer, and it is the best form of prayer. Maybe I'm partial to it, but I do think it is the best form of prayer for the very reason it's very simple. Anybody can do it. All of us should be able to do it. And there is nothing better than being with the person that you love the most. And, this is one of the complaints. Those of you who are already married and those you will be getting married eventually will learn from your spouses. The best gift you can give to your spouse is your time more than anything. I get into lots of trouble on that account because I don't give enough time to my wife and to my children. Asha can tell you, and my kids will tell you, I get too engrossed in all kinds of stuff and creative stuff that I like to do. And therefore I forget that my family is there and my kids are in need of me. And if I could just sit and watch some Tom and Jerry and watch some, some stupid show would be so nice, but I don't think my pride and my way of looking at life lends itself doing it, and I just have to learn it. And that's the best form of love I've learned, is to give time. And the hardest thing is to spend time quietly without talking, just listening. That's the hardest part of it. When I was in Arkansas at our retreat center in Eureka Springs, there was a man who came to the retreat center every other day probably, and he comes around 1:32 in the morning, and his name is Edgar. And 2 in the morning, I didn't know the several nights when he came. I happened to catch him one night when I was at the retreat center in the middle of the night doing some work. I saw somebody passing through. I saw him on the other side of the window, and I watched, who in the world is that at this time of the night? And so I followed him, and he was going to the chapel that was left open. So Edgar, I thought, okay, obviously he's going to pray. So I thought, I shall not do anything, let him pray. So I waited and I waited and I waited. It was around 4 o'clock in the morning, finally, when he came out of this prayer time. So I had all night long waiting for him. And so I watched him. I didn't say a word. I watched him for the next couple of months. So he came about 2 hours for every day. He worked in Tyson. Every day he came for every other day, about a couple of hours, come and sit there. So finally, after 2 months, I mugged up enough courage and I went to him and I said, hello, I'm so-and-so. I had been watching you coming into this chapel. Tell me, what are you doing in here? And he said, well, I work for Tyson. I said, okay. And I come here after my shift around 11:30, 12 o'clock. I said, okay. Then what do you do? I pray. I said, what do you pray? I don't know. I said, okay, so what do you do when you're sitting there? I just sit there. I just look at the Lord and I say, Lord, now what do you have to tell me? I thought he was joking, honestly, because I couldn't believe that a guy who works for Tyson has learned the stuff that I tried to learn in 14 years in the seminary. He's telling me what is the best way to pray. And I said, okay, so that's all you do? He said, yeah. So you sit there and you just tell the Lord, talk to me. So does the Lord talk? No, most of the time he just sits in silence, but sometimes he does talk. I said, okay, so do you hear sound? And he said, no, I don't hear sound. I feel the inspiration. Most of the time when I sit in silence, I see my own activities of daily life, the things that I do and the things that I don't do and the things that I failed to do. I remember them. I said, okay, what good does the good does to you? Then he said, well, so the next day when I go to work, when I see people, it tremendously helps me to behave better. I said, just by sitting quiet. He said, yeah. I thought, not a bad idea. This is supposed to be something that I should have learned umpteen years of being in seminary and being in priestly life. But then here is a wonderful Hispanic man who works for Tyson, comes in the middle of the night telling me what I should have learned long back. So why that introduction is to say, it is the simplest form of prayer, to sit in silence and pray. We have a place in Chester, Arkansas. It's a very tiny little town of 99 people, and I was the 99th person in this huge city. So when I first got this piece of property, I had a practice. This was before Asha, so she wouldn't know this. And so I had a practice there when I was in Fort Smith at the time. I would go to this place in Chester and spend one whole day once a month entirely to sit on my couch. My lazy, I won't say the last word. Okay, you can imagine what that is. Completely lazy, sit there on the couch, and then I don't read, I don't watch television, I don't do anything other than just sit down with a glass of water the entire day. The first 2-3 months, it was excruciatingly hard because that's not something I wanted to do. That was just completely nonsense to sit without doing anything. But then eventually it became addictive. It became really fun, very enjoyable. All I did was to get up in the morning and go there and spend the time, go out, get something to eat at lunchtime, come back and sit on the couch till about 5-6 in the evening, come back. I'm saying all these stories only to say the best form of prayer from my perspective, however skewed, however biased I am, is to spend time even if you are 100% distracted. And I want to know who in the world is not distracted. Any one of you, me, we are distracted when we are in prayer. That's the best form of prayer. And that is the foundation of centering prayer. All to say, if we can be distracted, there we go. We are in centering prayer. It's that simple. So there you go. I don't think I need to tell you anything more, but here it is for the study of this of centering prayer. I'm going to do the PowerPoint and go through that. And if you have any questions, you may ask or raise your hand if I didn't make much sense of what I'm saying right here. Okay, let's see if I can get this going. Okay. Is that on? Okay. So the method of centering prayer, it is called the prayer of consent. And I'm going to focus on that word, the prayer of consent. What does that mean? Prayer of consent is basically saying, yes, I'm here. That's it. That's all simple as that. I'm here. I'm giving you the permission to do whatever you want to do with my life at this moment, maybe the next 20 minutes to talk to me. And that's what centering prayer is all about. It is about a relationship. And so when we enter into any relationship with anybody, I want to say it's a starting point of a prayer life. So if we have a good relationship with our spouses, our children, our neighbors, our friends, teachers, anybody for that reason, that entering into that relationship with a person is the starting point of prayer. Therefore, I call centering prayer is a relationship, a discipline to foster relationship. I always say this. I've said this many times when I preach or when I visit with people. I always tell them that discipleship is discipline. There is nothing called discipleship without discipline. So if I am the follower of Jesus, or if I am the follower of any political party for that reason, or follower of any ideology, I have to have a certain discipline of life to keep it, to follow it, to do it faithfully, and then adhere to that discipline every day so that those who watch me will know that so-and-so is a follower of this particular ideology. Those of you, if you have heard the story of the little prince in the little planet on the other side of the world or the universe, the little planet with where they have about every 30 minutes there is a sunset and a sunrise. The little prince and the fox becomes the friends of each other. And so what happens is every 30 minutes there is a sunset, every 30 minutes there is a sunrise. If you haven't read that Little Prince book, it's worth reading. Tiny little book. Sister Macrina Wiedeker, an author and a writer who just died about a couple of months ago from Fort Smith, Arkansas, introduced me this particular book. Absolutely beautiful. What happens is this fox and this little prince, two inhabitants of this tiny little planet, and in this planet, they meet each other early in the morning, let us say about 10 o'clock in the morning. So the little prince says to the fox, "Why are you here every morning?" And the prince and the fox says, "I'm here because I want to see you. But you're not my friend. Of course, you're not my friend. We don't become friends until we make it a part of our daily life. And making it part of our daily life is coming together every day, every 30 minutes to this one place for a few seconds of meeting each other. And then we anticipate seeing you." The fox says, "I anticipate seeing you at this particular time of the night or the day. And then you anticipate seeing me." And so then we both have this tremendous anticipation of joy, waiting for each other to meet each other at this particular time. That action is called discipline. That's exactly what I'm trying to say in here. So discipleship happens as a result of discipline. The discipline of centering prayer is in total service to fostering the relationship. So the reason why we do the centering prayer is to build the relationship with God. I know all of you do pray. I know all of us, it's not easy for us to just sit down for 10 minutes, 20 minutes in total silence. But I will suggest it is one of the best, absolute best form of de-stressing ourselves through all that is going on in life. Now I'm down here with COVID, or there are lots of people who are struggling with all kinds of issues in life. And I suggest to everyone there is one little remedy for getting through this time of our pandemic, this time of isolation, away from one another, is to give that time to God and build that relationship with God. And that process is what I call the centering prayer. The contemplative disposition toward discipline means to do in love. Spend time in love, giving the time to the one that you love, whether it is to God, to your parents, to your brothers, your sisters, your neighbors, your friends, anybody for that reason. Give your time. There is no better gift you can give. So expand the concept of contemplative prayer is what it does. It is resting in God is contemplative prayer, which we call centering prayer. So if we can rest in God, that's what I shared with you the story earlier when I said of me spending time resting in the small little trailer in Chester, Arkansas, doing nothing. Resting is being with God, and that's what is required. If our mind and body can rest. There is a class that I give often on healing, and I've given this class to the doctors and nurses and chaplains all across the country. When I give this class, one of the things that I always insist is if you can rest your body cells will learn that you are calm and they don't have to get excited, too much excited about what's going on in your system. And that alone is going to bring about healing and peace within you. That is a simple thing that I am doing right now with COVID, is to spend time simply reading or sleeping. Hard for me to do because I want to get things done. I don't want to waste my time simply doing nothing. And so that's what contemplative prayer is, doing nothing but giving time to God, resting in God. There are ways to get there using methods that are easy to integrate. Centering prayer method is one of them. First rung on the ladder of contemplative prayer. The first step of this ladder is the centering prayer, to go into a time of being with God. It's that discipline that we are talking about. It refines our intuitive faculties to enter into contemplative prayer. I've heard this many times, people say about people who can read somebody's hearts, or someone who is able to intuitively understand someone else. They call them the ninja. Have you heard that? People will call others, "Oh, here comes the ninja. He or she can read somebody's thoughts or hearts," or "This is a person who can understand." One of the greatest people I've heard who's called so-called a ninja in the modern terms is Saint Padre Pio. You go to Saint Padre Pio, he's a person who spent a lot of time in prayer. He died in 1960s. And one of the gifts that he had was this, that he spent an enormous amount of time in prayer, in silence. And nobody could just go and lie to him, because he knows exactly what is going on in your hearts, and he can read your thoughts, and he can tell you, "You lied to me." That's not a pleasant thing. That intuition of what is going on, intuitive faculties are expanded as a result of us becoming silent. It is an extract of monastic spirituality. I told you that when I went to seminary at the age of 15, that's where I learned to go into contemplation in silence. But now Father Thomas Keating has made it available to people who are interested in spending time in prayer. If you have an interest in time in prayer, there is the first thing: be silent. Taking the right dosage is important when you take an antibiotic. So is taking the right dosage in prayer life to maintain a level of intimacy with God. Now, what is that right dosage? We don't know exactly, but by keeping silence, we will learn it. Keeping a level of interior silence is necessary. And I call on my computer, my screen saver on my computer is a little script that says silence is music. And silence is between the sound of music is between the sound. Actually, if you begin to write music, you will learn very quickly. The greatest piece of music is written when there is silence in between, when there is nothing happening. It is the anticipation of a sound that makes you feel the music is magnificent, not the sheer sound that makes it feel. It's a silence that makes you feel. And therefore I call centering prayer is that incredible silence that makes you long to enter into that relationship with God. And so the flow of thoughts, and so we all have distractions. We have continuous flow of thoughts in us all the time, willingly or unwillingly. I used to, when I was growing up at home, we used to have, evening prayer, and we didn't get supper until we finished our evening prayer at my home. Growing up as a Roman Catholic, it was important that we say the rosary. I don't put my children through all of this before they get their dinner, but sometimes I have the temptation to do it because how I grew up, because I know it does have some value. going forward in life. And so this is what we did. We had the rosary around 8 o'clock in the evening, and the rosary was about 30 minutes. And this rosary is so, we learned it so by heart, we can think about anything in the world when we pray. And when we said the rosary, we would be thinking about the next day, the fights, the homework that we did not do, or the fights we got into, or the food that we wanted, anything and everything that you can send through your brain, you are saying while you're saying Hail Mary. And my mother will join the prayer during that time while she's also cooking and closing the chickens and gathering the chickens from the outside, gathering the eggs. All of those things happen while we are praying. So you would ask, what in the world were we praying? We were not praying much. It was the discipline. That's it. It's the discipline is what made the prayer, that we had the discipline to gather every evening to come together. So what we are talking about, we have continuous flow of thoughts and distractions. That's okay. But still enter into that time of discipline. We sometimes identify ourselves with them. We are either averse to them or we are attracted to them. These thoughts that we have in our hearts that we might think like, I'm going to meet my friend tomorrow. Oh, that is exciting and wonderful. I am going to have a party tomorrow, birthday party. All of those things are very exciting. But then going to school or studying or getting the homework done, that's not very exciting. So there is an attraction and an aversion to the thoughts that we have in our hearts. It doesn't matter. We still have them, and that is a part of the prayer. Either way, we give energy to them positively or negatively. Good thoughts or bad thoughts, we are giving energy positive or negative to these thoughts. Think of the thoughts as a lake with boats and debris coming on the surface. As you've been in a boat, you know all the stuff that floats on the top of the water. Think of that as, but you're not paying attention, you just keep going. Unaware of the inner consciousness. Ordinarily, we are unaware of this stream of consciousness. All the distractions that we have in our hearts, we are generally unaware of it. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen. It does happen. We have to train ourselves to recognize it and work with it. To know, Father Thomas Keating was asked by a nun one day, Father Keating, I got almost 10,000 distractions in a 20-minute prayer time. And Father Thomas Keating said, that is absolutely wonderful. You got 10,000 distractions because you got 10,000 opportunities to return to prayer and say to the Lord, well, Lord, I got 10,000 distractions. I think that is fantastic. So if we have distraction, so wonderful that we have distractions, because it tells us that we are fully alive and God is seeing all that is going on within us. It is this level of our being that makes us most human, the vulnerable, the scared, afraid, pathetic human beings that sometimes we turn out to be, politically fighting with each other, not understanding each other, angry with each other, things that are going on all around. It's not always holy. Sometimes I want to beat people out of their stupidity, but the Lord wants to see it. That's who I am as a person. And so God gets it. That is what we're talking about when we speak about the bad distractions that we may have. And so the values here are much greater and valuable than what we find in our psyche. Refresh this level, we will refresh our deepest consciousness. When we have these kinds of distractions, become aware of it, then we will refresh our deepest consciousness, and that is what is needed. So how do we get there? You probably have learned all of this stuff, what the guidelines for centering prayer. What I gave you was just a basic understanding. It is a relationship that you and I can enter into with all the distractions and failures that you and I may have. Still, it is worth spending time with the one that you love. And if that person you love is your father, your mother, your brother, your sister, your friend, your neighbors, members of your church, your youth group, your leaders, all of those are expressions of love. Spend time with them. Give the same benefit to God once a day, twice a day, 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day, to just sit silent and have all the distractions in the world. Do not worry about reading anything from the Book of Common Prayer. I don't think I can make a prayer any easier or better. Now, What are the guidelines? How do we do it? And here is number one, choose a sacred word as a symbol of your intention to consent to God's presence and action within. As we began, I said it's a prayer of consent. That's what we're talking about in here. That how do we do that? Number one, before you go into this time of prayer, choose a sacred word. One word as your desire to let God, giving God the permission to talk to you, be with you. Number two, sit comfortably with your eyes closed, settle briefly and silently. Introduce the sacred word as a symbol of your consent to God's presence and action within. So sit comfortably with your eyes closed, knowing that, okay, I have this word, I'm going to sit down with my eyes closed, and do not open your eyes. When engaged with your thoughts, return ever so gently to the sacred word. If you get distracted, or if there are 1,000 thoughts coming into your mind, you use this sacred word. What is a sacred word? We'll go into that later in a few minutes. At the end of the prayer period, instead of jumping out of the chair, oh my gosh, I'm done, I've been there for 5 minutes without talking, just give 30 seconds more and just sit down and get yourself quietly so that you don't faint. There is no anxiety, there is nothing to be done. The world is still where it is. Everything that you left 5 minutes before still be waiting for you. The food, the prayer, the relationship, the fights, the tensions, they are all waiting for you 5 minutes later. You're just putting a stop for 5, 10, 20 minutes a day. And then, so here is guideline number one. Choose a sacred word, which we just said. The sacred word expresses your intention to consent. So the word that you're choosing is simply a tool to say that here is the word I'm introducing. Maybe the word is Jesus. Let us go into that. It is sacred because the meaning you give it as a symbol. The consent is the heart and soul of centering prayer. That is, you are letting God choose you. You are allowing God to choose you. I can guarantee you, not one time ever in our life we will go wrong when God chooses it for us. And so what is God's presence and action within? God's presence is the divine life within us, which affirms our basic core of goodness. The more we spend time, what that means is simply this: the more we spend time with God, we will eventually become good, kind-hearted, genuine human beings in this world who can transcend the differences that we may feel with other people when we have differences of opinion. God's action is the grace of the transformation process. This changing process is what happens. God's action is the grace. So the sacred word is the word of one or two syllables, as recommended in this book called The Cloud of Unknowing. Very difficult book to read because there's a very mystical writing in this. But in that book speaks about one or two words that you can choose. The words like Jesus, Abba, Mary, mercy, love, kindness, compassion, peace. Or any of these words. You can choose any word in the name of a flower, whatever that makes you to bring your distraction to one word. If I'm distracted about what is going on politically, I can bring the word peace. If I don't understand what is going on with the two different parties, I can bring the word peace. If I don't understand what's going on at home, I can bring the word peace. So every time there is a distraction, I repeat the word peace. So it's an exercise. Actual exercise. We will choose our sacred word before our first period of centering prayer, and we are going to keep that word throughout our centering prayer time. And I suggest, if you can, use that for every centering prayer time. Sitting comfortably with your eyes closed, settle briefly and silently introduce a sacred word as a symbol of your consent to God's presence and action within. So why do we sit comfortably with our eyes closed? Eyes closed is a way of saying, yes, I'm now ready. That's it. That's all to it. By taking a physical action, I'm also going to say when I bring the word in. So there is this double piece here. I'm closing my eyes and telling the Lord, when I close my eyes, I'm consenting to you talking to me. Number two, when I'm distracted, oh Lord, I'm going to bring up a word called peace to tell you that I'm going to let you talk to me. So here is a second consent. And so sitting comfortably with your back straight so that we don't fall asleep. And if you fall asleep, that's perfectly fine too, because Saint Teresa of Child Jesus, little flower, used to say, where else will you sleep other than in the presence of someone you love? If it is in front of God that you can fall asleep, do so. Do not be distracted by it or worried about it. Fall asleep, but still have the discipline to do it. That's number three, with eyes closed as a symbol of letting go. Silently say the word as a symbol of your consent. Number 3, the guideline. When engaged with your thoughts, return ever so gently by repeating that sacred word. So you can see the thoughts is an umbrella term for every perception, including sensations or feelings or fears, memories, plans, reflections, concepts, commentaries, or spiritual experiences. Sometimes when you close your eyes, you can see things, or you imagine things, or there is an itch, there is a pain or a headache. All of those things are what we are calling thoughts. All those experiences. So anytime you feel there is a headache, use the sacred word. Or my eyes itch, use a sacred word. Or I'm thinking about somebody, use a sacred word. Anytime there is a distraction, anything be, use this sacred word. Thoughts are inevitable, integral, and normal. That's what I said earlier. The number of 10,000 thoughts are 10,000 occasions to say to the Lord, Lord, look how human I am. And that's what Thomas Keating was saying. It is a wonderful opportunity to do the best thing. And so when engaged with your thoughts, to return ever so gently, a minimum effort is indicated. And guideline 4, at the end of the prayer period, remain in silence with your eyes closed for a couple more minutes. The additional time enables us to gently bring silence into the activity of our everyday life. So minimum 20 minutes, practice 2 times a day. Finally, the sacred word is a way of renewing your intention to open yourself to God and to accept Him as He is. While this does not prevent anyone from praying in other forms at other times, the period of centering prayer is not the time to pray specifically for others. By consenting to God, you are implicitly praying for everyone past, present, and future. You are embracing the whole of creation. You're accepting all reality, beginning with God and with the part of your own reality of which you may not be generally aware, namely of the level of your being. So in centering prayer, what we are basically doing is becoming aware of ourselves. And that's what Jesus does to Mary. So this picture is of Jesus and Mary and Martha, and Jesus sits with Mary. Martha behind Mary is sitting and worried about all kinds of things. And Jesus makes Mary realize everything that is happening in her life when she is quietly listening. And that's exactly what we are talking about in here when we speak about centering prayer, quietly allowing God to see us and ourselves seeing us in the light of God. So I hope I made sense of what I said. If you have any questions, you're welcome to ask or share. Thank you for listening to my talk, this, 30 minutes nonstop.
Thank you, Father Jose. Anyone have any questions for Father Jose? Comments? Thoughts?
Wow, just a big thank you. Wow. I'm going to be, I'm trying to absorb now. Just, thank you.
I agree. I'm trying to absorb as well.
Yeah.
I told you so, Anne. Didn't I?
Yeah, Father Jose is on mute. I didn't hear what he said.
It was me. I said, I told you so.
I meant to send you the PowerPoint as a PDF file. That way you have everything what I just said with you. And I'll add that to the chat here. That way you will have them. And if not, Josh will be able to send them to you.
Yeah, so if you want to just email it to me, I'll put it in the follow-up email with all the other
Perfect.
links.
Yes, I'll do that. Yes.
And then also, in addition to this, is recording still, and it'll be available. So if you need to go back and rewatch it, you can see what we talked about.
I'm just so happy to meet you, Father Jose. I've heard so much about you, and finally I get to meet you, even if it's Zoom.
Me too, Anne. I know, me too. I've been, many times in the past, Jonathan and we talked about it. And so it is a joy to meet you too, and Kathy, and all of you, though. It is so wonderful. And I am doing well. I'm grateful that your prayers are grateful for it. So
we wish you healing.
Yes, thank you.
Pray for your healing.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.